the Beatles have become a museum. Welcome to Mark and Pete. Only the Beatles, I think, could turn standing on a cold roof in central London into a near religious pilgrimage site. Yes, this is Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. Now, here's our first thought.
The Beatles get back again. When music decides to get back or come together to please me, should yesterday be another day in the life, or should we just let it be? Yes, once again, here we are, another Beatles story. Well, remarkably, the Beatles are turning the building where they played their last ever gig into an exhibition place. Yes, it's a museum for fans. Wow, I certainly am looking forward to this. Yes, the Grade 2 listed mansion, 3 Savile Row, which served as the band's headquarters between 1968 and 1972, even when the actual band had split up. But commercially, they actually continued. And of course, the brand lives on. Let It Be was the basement recording, and many people still think that that's a great piece of music, still stands up today. Mr. Pete, here we go, yet another story, more than 50 years after the actual band split up. And yet now we've actually got a pilgrimage, no longer just simply at the Cavern in Liverpool, but in London. What say you about this?
Yes, the Beatles are an enduring story, aren't they? I mean, the thing is, I guess you would argue, Mr. Mark, that actually they were pretty good at songwriting,
yes.
and performing was reasonable as well. So, you know, they perhaps there is a good reason, but there are other talented artists that don't get quite the same attention as the Beatles. And I think it's because, here's my two penneth on why it is. The Beatles were at the beginning of that sort of style. You know, there's a band of four, I was going to say attractive young men, 4 young men. And so they are then, of course, attractive to the young girls who watch them. It was sort of like a phenomenon at the time. And it was the start of that sort of lively music being as popular as it was, bringing in different elements of music to create this unique sound. So because they were at the start of something, they become the most famous. But also, I would say it's enduring because, especially today, these days, I say being old and cynical, the music, the popular music or pop music of today, just isn't anywhere near the standard that it was back in the day of the Beatles. So what have we got to celebrate these days? Well, let's go back and celebrate the Beatles. So I think it will work. I know it's you introduced to say Paul McCartney's going to do that. He must have quite considerable backing to create this museum experience. But it's something I think that will be very popular because the Beatles remain popular for the cynical reasons I've just said.
Well, I agree with you. And in my opinion, you know, by far, they were probably one of the most creative bands of all time. And, you know, ironically, as you've mentioned, you know, a lot of their songs have endured both in singles and albums. Now, Sir Paul McCartney has told the media that he wanted fans to have an official Beatles destination, but in London. And he said that tourists can come to England and they can go to Abbey Road. They can then go on inside and then go around to enjoy the rest of the experience. I believe that the idea being is that as you go up to the rooftop, which is where they had their last concert, which certainly upset at the time in 1969 a lot of the police, and it was actually curtailed, ironically. But you, as a member of public, could be a Beatle. So that's the idea, is it becomes interactive.
It is interesting that going to Beatles, places where the Beatles have done things, it can be almost like a spiritual pilgrimage. People would make, Christians would make pilgrimages to the Holy Land and to certain shrines in the country where religious things happen. I know in the Muslim faith, there is still the tradition of people making the big pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in a lifetime, and preferably you go there several times and go on your pilgrimage. This is like a spiritual pilgrimage, going to be where this iconic, famous moment. I mean, at the time, I think there were the police got involved because there were complaints about the noise when they performed on the roof. I think I'm right in saying that. But these days, yes, seen as sort of this great moment, and I think it's like a spiritual pilgrimage. But can I mean, a question, just a philosophical question? Can it take the weight? I mean, where people wanting to have that spiritual experience, getting in touch with something, with the greatness of the Beatles or the greatness of pop music, which may have affected them deeply. Will it let them down ultimately? I don't know. It's just sort of a question to ask
Well, there
philosophically.
is an irony in what you're saying here because John Lennon at the time in the 1960s famously
Yes,
said the Beatles have become more popular than Jesus Christ.
yes,
And
yes. At the
unfortunately, in
time,
the
he was probably
context,
right.
at the context of the time, it was really taken out of context. But the point being is, of course, that's when the whole thing turned in America, and of course they got into a lot of trouble. Now,
Yes,
it's interesting, isn't it, that when we look at the from an entertainment perspective, I think that people don't just listen to the music. I think that they also follow the brand, they follow the
sure.
fashion, because one of the things that Beatlemania offered was entertainment in many different ways. They inspired, the flop top, mop top haircuts. They then went on
Yes,
to obviously the flower power arena and many other different things. So it's interesting within a very short time frame between 1962 and 1970 when they were recording, that's when not only did the music, change the world, but also some of the other things which was around the business side. Now we know that the Beatles over the years have had battlegrounds with the rights of royalties and many other things there. But in this particular case, I actually do agree that I think it's a very clever idea. Whether it will work and whether it will actually gain enough money over time. Well, let's see. Time will tell. But I'd ask you, Mr. Pete, why have it there? Why not necessarily? Why not have a museum in other parts? So here's an idea, folks. So here,
yes.
let's ask Sir Paul McCartney to come onto the show. Why not have one at, say, in America, some of the last stadiums that they had concerts there? Why not do some in Japan? Why not do some in Australia? They toured the world at the time, so why not have a Beatles museum in different countries? We can
Yes,
make it
why not in
Beatlemania land.
well, yes, why not? Why not indeed? Yes. I mean, it's interesting. I was sort of asking the question earlier, what of this spiritual experience of people getting in touch with music? Uh, I don't think it's in competition with Christianity or other religious experiences. I think what it is it's an innate desire to get in touch with greatness, not thinking that you know Paul McCartney is a saint or a great man or whatever it is, but it's that the way that the music touched them and affected them, as you say, made huge changes in society. But music changes people's lives, and it's like the soundtrack to important parts in their lives. So I don't see a problem with them doing that. It may be, but I think that maybe that this particular choice of venue is the best because of that iconic um, performance on its very roof. You don't get that in all the other
Absolutely.
places in the world. So I think that's why it seems to be a brilliant place. Maybe bring in a few more tourists into Britain and boost our economy in these troubling times.
Well, I agree with you. Now, for of course, for those who are really sick of the sound of music as it stands right now,
Yes,
why
that's
not
right.
simply tune in, get a bit of help, and listen 8 days a week?